In this lesson, you're going to find out how I can take this one image and just do all kinds of crazy stuff to it using adjustment layers, and how I can incorporate smart layers with the adjustment layers to create even better compositions. So I'm going to start with taking this image and just pulling up my layers panel and choosing that I want to apply a hue saturation adjustment layer. Now you'll notice that in CS4, when you pull up the adjustment layer, that you now have an adjustments panel. In here, I am pulling the saturation down. And you'll notice that if I really desaturate something, it looks black and white, but I'm going to leave just a little touch of the color in there. Now going in, and you'll see that there's a mask over here on the right, and I'm going to take my paintbrush, press X to make my black come forward. Make my brush size a little bit larger, and I'm going to press 2 to change my brush opacity to a 20%. And then I'm just going to build back up some of this color where I want to see it. So now maybe in the shirt I want to bring back a little bit more of the color. Even though it's a dark color, I'm going to press 0 because I actually want to go in and add some vibrancy to this. If I make a mistake, I hit X and I can just kind of paint that back out. So you'll notice again, I'm using the masking feature in addition to the adjustment layer, which gives you all sorts of cool opportunities. So, okay, that's pretty good. I'm pressing X, clean that up a little bit. But as you can see, I can constantly work on this until I get it to the state that I want it in. And of course, I can always turn this off or back on if I want to go back to the way the original item was. Now, I'm going to continue on, and I'm going to apply another adjustment layer. Now notice, if I come in here and I use my magic wand, I'm clicking on background, I'm making sure contiguous is checked off, I'm selecting his shirt, and I'm going to take my lasso tool, hold down my Alt key or Option key, and just kind of do a quick circle around this area that I don't want selected. Maybe down here. But don't forget, the really great thing about using adjustment layers is that it does create a mask, and I can edit this. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a solid color. And I'm going to choose to add a blue color to this. And click OK. Now, the issue with this is that it looks kind of funky right now, doesn't it? I'm going to go ahead and choose the blending mode to color, and now it's got this cool kind of reflective, velvety type of look. I can zoom in, and you can see my mask was just horrible here. But the great thing again is that I can click on this mask, I can take my brush, make it a little smaller. I'm pressing Shift right bracket to make it a little harder, a little smaller again. Okay, what color do I need to paint with? Black to remove this, but maybe I want to bring it to like a 70%. So I press 7, which puts my opacity at 70%. And the reason I'm doing 70% is so that I'm not just flat out ending at the end of the shirt. I want it to look more natural. And if I can kind of dab into this a little bit, I can get a more natural edge to this color. So I'm just cleaning this up. You can spend as much time as you want cleaning yours up. Mine's not really going to be used in production, so I'm not going to be too particular, but I do want to get the real obvious spots, like down here. Looks kind of funky here. And we got also some of the equipment. We can eliminate that as well. And if you ever want to go back to 100%, press 0, and then you can eliminate this without the brush strokes, without repeating your brush strokes over and over again. So I'll go in and just clean this up a bit. Soften my brush up, Shift left bracket, make my brush size a little bit larger, and just kind of dab this quickly for a more artistic, creative effect. There we go. Back out by pressing Control 0 and just clean up this sleeve a little bit. Okay, so I've got 2 adjustment layers on top of the background. And the rule of thumb is typically, if you want to apply an adjustment layer, it will apply to anything that is underneath it. So this background layer is being totally affected by this adjustment layer as well as the other one. But if I duplicate this layer just by dragging it to the dog-eared document, I'll call it guitar. and I'll put this on top of the stacking order. There we go. You'll see that this is totally not affected. And if I take my move tool, but yet that layer underneath does have those changes reflected on it. Now I'm turning off the visibility of this top one. I'm coming down to the bottom and I'm clicking on the background because I want to apply another adjustment layer. So I am choosing this time curves. And I really want to kind of blow out this look. So I'm grabbing the curve and I'm just pulling it up to brighten this, almost exaggerating this. But yet I want to be careful that I have some dot value in this white area up here. So I'm going to take my highlight eyedropper and double click on it and add that I want 5% cyan, 3% magenta, and 3% yellow, which is a good starting point for white. Yes, that is my new target color, and then I can click up here. Now I'm trying to go for this funky type of look or effect, so this is actually fine. Now, a slight change is seen when dragging layers around, but the effects are even more apparent when you turn the layers on and off. You'll see that it does reflect that change. I'm going to put them all back on. Now what if I want to put another layer back underneath? Like for instance, if I want to drag this guitar guy down here, but yet I don't want to have him have all those changes reflected on him. And you'll notice that here even the masks don't work because he's been repositioned. So I really don't want those adjustment layers to have any impact on him. So I'm going to turn off the visibility. In fact, I'm just going to drag him to the top. I'm going to take my top adjustment layer and shift click all the way down to the background layer, and I'm going to right click and convert this to a smart object. Wow, this is great because now look, I can take this guy down. If I turn this off, you'll see that he's not being affected. And in fact, if I just want to put an entire layer mask across this layer, I can add a mask. I'll take my gradient tool and I'll just fade him out. Let me just pull this over a little bit so we can see a little better. Okay, so I've got a combination of 3 adjustment layers applied to this layer, but yet it's not impacting the layer beneath because I turned it into a smart object. And I can do that with this one as well. I can come in, I can select this layer, but this time I'll apply the black and white adjustment layer to this. And you'll notice that, of course, my adjustments panel comes up. I can click on the little click and drag button and I can lighten or darken my adjustment. And that one looks pretty good, so I'm going to leave it at that. But again, I have a mask here. If I want to fade into the color, I can grab my gradient, I can fade in, or of course I can just take the entire layer and add a mask. But before I add that mask, I'm going to do a really quick selection of what I want to select in that mask. I'm going to refine the edge. I'm going to feather it quite a bit. I want it really soft. Click OK, and then add the mask. Now, I'm going to go ahead up, and you can see that by doing that, my mask in the back of this one isn't working so well. Notice I can hold my Shift key down. And if I hold my Shift key down, I can disable that mask, and then I'll drag this guy on top. You'll see that I've got more of this effect. Drag my adjustment layer on top, and look, the black and white now affects this layer and this layer. Don't want that to happen. Select both those layers, right click and convert to smart object, and now his color comes back. So hopefully you're seeing that when you're using adjustment layers, you can kind of combine as many of these adjustment layers as you want, but just it's a good idea to convert them to smart objects if you don't want to affect the layer beneath. Now if I double click on either one of these layers, you'll see that I can come in here, open it up, and I can still work with these adjustment layers. So like for instance, I can go back in, click on curves, and I can adjust this. Maybe I don't want it to be so bright, maybe a little bit more contrasty. I can save this file. It's actually opened up a separate file for that layer. I'll close it, save it, go back, and the change has been reflected. Same with black and white. Double click on this. Whoops, not on the name. Click OK. Choose that, maybe in this case I want to add a tint to this. The tint is going to be a orange color. Click OK. Save this, close it, and that change has been reflected as well. And in fact, I think I need a mask on this to fade this out a little bit more. There we go. And maybe we'll make him just a little bit bigger by pressing Control T, and you'll see that the adjustment layer scales up. Any masks that I have scale up, and change the opacity of the entire smart layer at once. Okay, so hopefully you've seen how you can take advantage of adjustment layers and smart objects to create really impressive composites.